It's the first morning of June, and I'm 19 years old, pulling into Rockport, Texas in a truck with 200,000 miles on it and a duffel bag sliding around the back seat. I've got a summer job lined up at a marina on the bay. Minimum wage, cash tips if I'm lucky, and a sleeping arrangement in the storage room above the bait shop that the owner described as cozy, and I would later describe as a closet with a cot. But I didn't care. I was out of my hometown for the first time. I was close to the water, and I had something I considered my greatest personal quality. I would help absolutely anyone who asked. No hesitation, no questions, just yes. I was convinced that made me a man of character. I'd built my whole self-image around it. The marina was run by a man named Earl Cobb. He was somewhere in his 60s, built like a fence post, and had been working that dock since before I was born. On the side, he built wooden skiffs in a shed behind the bait shop, flat-bottom fishing boats, one at a time, by hand. He didn't talk a lot, but when he did, you listened, because the words were never wasted. By the end of my first week, Earl had noticed something about me. He waited until a Friday afternoon, when the dock had cleared out and we were cleaning up. He wiped his hands on a rag, looked out at the water for a long moment, and said, "Walk with me. The bay's more honest than most people. Let me show you something." The first thing he showed me was Bobby. Bobby had a slip at the end of the dock, a nice 22-foot bay boat, almost new. He was out there most mornings, telling anyone who'd listen about how hard the fishing had been, how tough things were, how he could really use a hand getting his gear sorted before he headed out. I'd helped Bobby 4 times in my first week alone, untangled his lines, filled his bait wells, helped him load his cooler. Earl stopped at the edge of the dock and watched him for a moment. Then he said quietly, "Look at his hands." I looked. Bobby was gesturing with them. Smooth, soft palms, not a callus anywhere. For a man who claimed to fish every single day, his hands told a different story. And while I stood there watching, a teenager from the RV park walked past the dock. Bobby called him over immediately, pointed at the gear, and the kid started sorting it without a word. "He's not a fisherman who needs help," Earl said. "He's a man who's discovered that other people will do his work if he looks tired enough. Every time you do that for him, you're not helping him get out on the water. You're just confirming he doesn't have to." We kept walking, down past the fuel pumps, toward the ship store at the end of the marina. There was a woman named Diane who ran the bait counter. She was always short-handed, always calling out to whoever walked past to help her restock the coolers, drag in the ice bags, move the inventory around. I'd helped her more times than I could count, but Earl pointed out something I hadn't seen. Every time someone helped Diane, she'd find something wrong with how it was done. The coolers weren't organized right, the bags were stacked too high, the ice hadn't been broken up fine enough. She'd complain, send people back to fix it, then call someone else over when they were done. Her own hands never touched the ice. "You're not her employee," Earl said. "You're not even her volunteer. When you keep answering that call, you become her solution to a problem she's never once tried to solve herself, and the moment you slow down, she'll find the next one." We turned back toward the main dock as the sun started dropping low over the bay. That's when we saw Marcus. He was leaning against a piling at the fuel dock, waving people down with real urgency. Said his outboard had seized up. Said he needed $60 for a part to get home. Said his wife was waiting on him, and he was desperate. I had my wallet halfway out of my pocket before Earl put a hand on my arm. 20 minutes later, we walked past Salty's, the bar and grill at the end of the Marina Road. Marcus was at a corner table with 2 other guys, a pitcher of beer between them, laughing at something on his phone. Earl didn't say a word about it. He didn't need to. On the way back to the shed, when the last of the sun was hitting the water and turning everything orange and flat, we heard it before we saw it. The sound of someone working in the shallows. A scraping, dragging sound. It was an old man named Pete. His boat, a beat-up, wide-beam bay skiff he'd owned for 30 years, had gotten loose from its mooring in a squall 3 nights before and drifted into the rocks near the jetty. The hull had a crack running 4 feet along the port side. The aluminum was bent and the bilge pump was gone. Most people would have called it a total loss. But Pete was standing knee-deep in the water in the dying light, soaked to the waist, collecting every usable piece he could reach. Cleats, hardware, sections of rail. Everything he could salvage stacked on the bank. His hands were cut up. He was moving slow, but he wasn't sitting down. Earl walked to the edge of the bank without a word. He set down the canvas bag he was carrying, reached in, and pulled out a length of marine-grade rope and a hand crank he kept in the shed. He waded in beside Pete. I followed. Between the 3 of us, we dragged the hull up onto the gravel in about 40 minutes, work that would have taken Pete the better part of the next 2 days alone. Pete nodded, pressed his lips together, said, "I'll get her back." Earl said, "I know you will." Walking back to the shed in the dark, Earl looked out at the water one more time. "The bay doesn't care who deserves what," he said. "It just moves. The fisherman who gets up anyway, who wades back in when his boat is at the bottom, that man is already doing the work. He's not asking you to do it for him. He's just asking for a little more reach than he's got right now. That's the only ask worth answering." I spent the rest of that summer in Rockport. I helped a lot of people, but I stopped counting it as a virtue just because I'd said yes. I started paying attention to the hands, to who was already moving, to who had decided that the dock was someone else's responsibility. I still think about Pete in the shallows at the end of the day, cut-up hands full of salvaged hardware, not even considering the idea of quitting. That's what deserving help actually looks like. Not the loudest ask, not the longest story, just someone still wading in, even when the water's cold and the light's almost gone. Those are the people worth showing up for. If this story lit something up in you, even just a quiet flicker, share it with someone whose light has gone a little dim. Subscribe to this channel and come back in a couple of days. There are more stories where this one came from.